So the Europeans would have an advantage over sort of non-Europeans that were in the country. But now there was a level playing field. Everybody coming from anywhere had to follow the same rules as the ones that were being followed before by the non-European residents. What's happened is that people who are indigenously from the UK start to believe that there's been a change in the fabric of society as a whole because of the mass number of immigrants coming in. And there was a record number, I think in 2023, there was about 1.3 million people that came into the country. And they came in legally. It's not that they came in illegally, but they came in legally and put a lot of strain on the system. The problem isn't implementing a 10-year period. The 10-year period, if you were implementing it on the future applicants that were coming into the country, would have been a justified change. So if you were saying, okay, I'm the government, I want to change the rules so that everyone who's coming in from now will be on a 10-year pathway instead of a 5-year one, they're trying to change the law retrospectively.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Economic Angle with Dr. Usman Chohan. I'm Dr. Usman Chohan. Today I have the pleasure of having a nice conversation with Danish Farooq Saab. He is a global mobility expert, very familiar with the United Kingdom, and his specialization is the United Kingdom. तो ये बरतानिया में मुकीम हैं और इनकी दस्तरस बहुत ज़्यादा है वहाँ की इमिग्रेशन लॉज और उनके सारे कवानीन पे और किस तरह से उनमें तबद्दुल और तगय्युर आ रहा है। लिहाजा हम इनसे थोड़ा सा जानने की कोशिश करेंगे कि बरतानिया में ये जो तब्दीलियाँ आ रही हैं इनके असरात क्या होंगे बरतानिया के लिए, पाकिस्तान के लिए। उसमें थोड़ा सा लीगल एंगल भी होगा और थोड़ा सा इकोनॉमिक, बेशक क्योंकि ये इकोनॉमिक एंगल प्रोग्राम है, इकोनॉमिक एंगल प्रोग्राम होगा। तो सबसे पहले मैं दावत दूंगा। वेलकम टू द शो दानिश साहब।
Thank you for having me on, Usman. It's a pleasure to be on your show. Just thinking about the things that we were talking about before the show. The UK generally, when I arrived here, I first came in 2017. And at that point in time, the UK was a very different place to what it is today. And one of the primary reasons for that is Brexit. Brexit just played a huge, enormous role in sort of separating the people that were working here with the country. So people basically left their jobs, went back to Europe. The UK basically stopped trading with Europe as well. The free movement of goods and the free movement of people as we know it has kind of been undermined since then. And what we're looking at is that, following Brexit, what started to happen was that obviously prices for different things started to go up with the passage of time. And the reason that happened was because, you're not directly trading with Europe anymore, and you need to discuss all of these tariffs and all of these deals to sort of procure what you need for the country. And that kind of really started to step up prices over here. That was the first sort of ever law that was passed, which made a level playing field for all of the immigrants that were coming into the country, because there was a two-tier system before that. So the Europeans would have an advantage over sort of non-Europeans that were in the country. But now there was a level playing field. Everybody coming from anywhere had to follow the same rules as the ones that were being followed before by the non-European residents. So that caused a huge sort of disparity with prices. And then COVID didn't help, because COVID came along and COVID sort of ramped up the prices even more, and businesses that were trading sort of had to close down. There was 2 years of all of that kind of stuff. So it took a significant amount of time for the UK to recover from all of that. And just when it started to recover, we had gotten this new Tory government. So the new Tory government had basically said that, it wanted immigrants to be coming in. There was a shortage of healthcare workers that had been recognized in the UK. यहाँ पर UK के अंदर what we have to realize is that most of the population in the UK is generally old people. And with these old people, you need a lot of carers that are coming from abroad on a regular basis and sort of looking after them, providing domiciliary care, or whether it's just normal sort of like in-house care homes. They needed all of these people, and they started to recruit people from abroad. And because of this, what's happened is that people who are indigenously from the UK start to believe that there's been a change in the fabric of society as a whole because of the mass number of immigrants coming in. And there was a record number, I think in 2023, there was about 1.3 million people that came into the country. And they came in legally. It's not that they came in illegally, but they came in legally and put a lot of strain on the system because out of these people, a lot of the immigrants that came did not genuinely come through a proper job offer in a proper company. They came through agents, as they would call them, and these agents charged a lot of money to bring these people in, get them visas from companies, and there was a lot of bad actors sort of playing their part in corporate immigration. And because of that, what's happened is that there's been an influx of people that the UK doesn't really need. And so the government's decided to sort of become a lot stricter on the immigrants as a whole, which is, if you ask me as a person, I think that that's the wrong approach to take right now. And the wrong approach is because these people have thought that all immigrants are the same, which is not the case. There's people that are coming in on boats. You have people that are coming in legally through either being a student or directly getting a job and coming in. And yes, there are bad actors in this. But what the government actually needed to do was to ramp up compliance rather than ramp up the costs. So, what they've fundamentally tried to do right now with the legislation that we hear is coming in is on the 12th of May, the UK government had announced that they're going to be coming out with an immigration white paper, which is a set of policies that they have proposed to implement later this year, some of which have already been implemented. So, one of the biggest policy changes that they have implemented is obviously the 10-year qualifying period. The 10-year qualifying period basically refers to the time it takes an individual from start to finish to come and gain permanent residency in the UK, to have all of the rights to work here and live here and study here without needing a visa, was 5 years. And now they're taking it to 10 years. So that
All
is
right.
one.
Let's pause here for a second. This is a lot to take in for the audience. So हम ये कह रहे हैं कि जो बरतानिया का तासुबाना रवैया है इसकी बुनियाद जो है एक मुआशी तहफ़्फ़ुज़ पसंदी है. You have an economic protectionism that started with Brexit, then it continued with COVID and a massive stimulus, which in the OECD countries was a huge burden on their fiscal deficits, जिससे अभी भी उनका एक बोझ है, बरकरार है. And after that, you said that there was the use of agents and a large influx, जो कि ना सिर्फ बरतानिया बल्कि हमने कनाडा में भी देखा है और दीगर और ममालिक में भी देखा है, which has created a lot of strain on the system while they incur fiscal deficits. यानी कि ये तासुबाना रवैया, ये जजीरा नुमा, मतलब जजीरा तो है ही है, जजीरा नुमा रवैया जो है, वो जहानत जो है, वो उसका इन्हिसार जो है वो इनकी तहफ़्फ़ुज़ पसंदी है, माशी तहफ़्फ़ुज़ पसंदी. So there's an economic basis for all of that. And then you began to talk about certain legislation that is being implemented. ये जो नाफिज कर रहे हैं कवानीन, जिसमें कि पहले 5 साल होता था और अब वो 10 साल बना रहे हैं इसको, जो कि एक बहुत बड़ी बात है. So talk a little bit about this extension.
So the problem isn't implementing a 10-year period. The 10-year period, if you were implementing it on the future applicants that were coming into the country, would have been a justified change. So if you were saying, okay, I'm the government, I want to change the rules so that everyone who's coming in from now will be on a 10-year pathway instead of a 5-year one, they're trying to change the law retrospectively. So what they have basically indicated is that for the people that already came into the country on a sort of a legitimate expectation that they were going to get the qualifying period in 5 years and settle in 5 years, are not going to get it anymore. And the government sort of moved goalposts for people midway. So what this has done is it's created an uncertainty in the UK market for so you have a lot of students that are coming in every year that are not going to be considering the UK as a destination because they won't be able to see themselves settling in a reasonable amount of time after working over here. So they will choose other destinations. Global talent will start to go other places. Then they've also shut down adult social care. Adult social care was care homes, care workers, care visas. They've shut them down completely. They don't want to hire anyone from abroad. The third major change is that on this visa, previously below degree level qualifications were accepted to sort of get into jobs, but they want to eliminate all of the roles that don't require a degree off of this visa. So they only want people who have a bachelor's degree, they can speak English, they are going to get proper jobs over here. They only are looking at those immigrants now. They have closed the door for many small time odd jobs or sort of the gig economy. They're going to be hurting that a lot. And when you see adult social care shutting down, you're going to see hospitals, the NHS more strained. One of the things that I was talking about to one of my colleagues the other day was that there's areas in the UK which are going to be priced out of sponsorship or affording to sponsor someone. So, for instance, if there's a small town that requires a skilled person, they're going to have to pay a lot more than what they usually had to pay to bring someone over, which is going to price those areas out of skills. So, what's going to happen is that there's going to be a cost of doing more with fewer hands. So that's how the prices are going to go up. The infrastructure is going to be burdened. Global talent is going to shift away from the UK after these policies. And these policies are sort of reactive. They aren't policies that seem very sensible at this time for the UK, because at the end of the day, the UK's biggest sort of export is its education. And once it shuts the door for many people to be able to come here and get educated, it's going to turn out to be a problem. It's going to be a problem for universities. They're going to use staff. They're going to lose their research funding. So it's going to be a problem in the education sector, in the healthcare sector, and then also where there's skill shortages, because immigration is one of those levers which impacts the economy in sort of many different ways that don't seem uh, as easy to realize on the surface, if you know what I say. Um,
Absolutely.
it,
Let's
it,
pause for a second because there's a lot of things that you've mentioned which are important. बुनियादी तौर पे तीन चीजें करना चाह रहे हैं वो तीन किस्म के कवानीन. The first thing is that they want to extend from 5 to 10 and they're applying it retroactively, which means that if you were there for 4 years, they now say, whoa, now it's more like 9 years and to complete the 10, right? So you were nearly there. So 4, you needed +1, and now you need the +6. So you were nearly there or near the finish line, and no. So that's very unfair, retroactively. I'm going to ask you after if this is impacting decisions, like what happens to people who've been there for 3, are they thinking about shifting? But the second thing after the 5 to 10 shift is adult social care. We know that the median age in the UK is 40 years. So you and I are young people by UK standards. In Pakistan, the median age is 20 years. So we're old people by Pakistani standards. We're looking at the medians here. So जैसे जैसे वहाँ बुढ़ापा होता जा रहा है, and there's going to be more need for this stuff. And like you mentioned, there's going to be greater strain on the system. And throwing people out that would have done the sorts of jobs such as nursing, etc., is not a solution to care for old people. That's the
yeah,
second thing. The third thing you mentioned was the degree requirements. I'm not sure if this is such a big deal, except we know that in the era of AI, it's the blue collar work that is actually expanding in terms of opportunities. And Gen Z and the earliest of the Gen Alphas should probably consider blue collar work rather than white collar work. But the degree requirement thing has existed in Canada for 40 years. It's existed in Australia. Point system hota hai, and you rack up a certain number of points. So there's a distortion there as well. And you mentioned because of these three factors, keep in mind that GDP has a consumption element. You
yeah,
spend more on that. There is a social contribution. You pay your taxes. Even if you're paying VAT, that adds to the revenue. Then you have an investment thing because people then buy houses and get everything
yeah.
for that. So there can be a lot of different effects. So it seems like the government is working at cross purposes to national economic growth. This is what we understand. Can you talk a little bit more about the adult social care thing and the degree requirement thing? I think those need
Okay.
more detail.
So adult social care had been around for a really long time, and there were people that were coming in from the Philippines, from India, from Pakistan, from basically all over the world to provide sort of nursing staff or look after the elderly. And these people spent a lot of time over here. Like you said, when they changed the qualifying period from 5 years to 10 years, me as a lawyer, the only thing that I can see as a reference to it was a case that happened back in 2006. Very famous case, similar circumstances. There was another visa route, which was a legacy visa route to this one, the one that they're changing right now, which is called the HSMP, the Highly Skilled Migrants Permit. And with the HSMP, the government tried to change the qualifying period from 4 years to 5 years, and then it was challenged by way of judicial review. And when it went in front of the judges basically said, there's a legitimate expectation that the person who applied had, that they were going to get it in 4 years. So you just can't move the goalpost to 5 years now, because when they came in, they had, under the doctrine of legitimate expectation, some rights to sort of stop this from happening. And the courts did exactly that, and they stopped it dead in its tracks. And the decision to make it 5 years was overturned for the people that had already sort of applied and were a part of the scheme, so to speak. So there's an argument which people are thinking of already based on the same precedent, which is legitimate expectation. But as a legal researcher, I have to look at the other side of the coin as well, which basically goes on to say that the government can depart from a legitimate expectation if they think that it is in the benefit of public interest. And how they can put it into the box of public interest is something that might remain to be seen once this is challenged. But with adult social care, what's happened now is that the government says that there's been a lot of exploitation in adult social care. And the reason for that was primarily for the health and care skilled worker visa. You wouldn't usually have to pay something that is called the immigration health surcharge. So the immigration health surcharge is something that's the equivalent of health insurance for the next 5 years. You pay it, and then you get to use the NHS for a set amount of time. And for the duration of your visa, you have to have paid the health insurance, and it goes per year. So if you've gotten a healthcare worker visa, you haven't paid that because you were exempt from paying that. So it would significantly bring down the cost of applying for a visa, which is why people preferred to apply for a healthcare worker visa rather than any other visa. And that's why the exploitation thus was more in this sector in comparison to any other. So they've shut down the route completely. And the care workers that had already come into the country but have lost their jobs, or the company's licenses have been revoked to issue them visas and can't issue them visas anymore due to compliance issues, they don't have to leave the country anymore. So the government said the internally displaced people need to be accommodated for first, rather than bringing in more people from outside. So this is one thing that's happened with adult social care, is they're going to shut it down completely, and they're going to start hiring. They want to start skills programs for young British children to be able to provide care, but we don't know how effective those will be right now. The second point that you basically wanted me to talk about is the RFQ level 6, which is degree level education if you want a job in the UK.
Mm.
So we have to look at, so there's something that's called the Migration Advisory Committee that basically looks at the national statistics that are coming out of the country, and they make decisions based on those statistics. We know for a fact that there's many sort of skilled jobs, like maybe a locksmith or a plumber or a carpenter, a roofer, a tiler, bricklayers. So maybe like the small guy. They usually don't have degrees as tradesmen. Um,
Mm.
this is going to impact them. It's going to impact care workers. Where care workers also require a diploma in nursing, they don't actually require a degree. So that's mostly RFQ level 3 to 5. It's not level 6, which is a bachelor's degree. So what this is going to do is it's going to single out about 118 different SOC codes. So they're going to discard all of these sort of job titles and not let them apply for skilled worker visas anymore. And they're going to close down the dependents for many categories as well. So if you are someone who has a small time job, or an odd job or a tradesman's job, you can't bring your wife and children into the country anymore. It's only for lawyers and doctors and engineers and so on and so forth, which is sort of creating a disparity now because everybody at the end of the day is out to make a living.
Fine, fine. So there's two groups of people I'd like you to comment on, and what your anecdotal evidence is about these two groups. The first and most important one, perhaps, because it involves a significant Pakistani community, is the people who want to migrate to the UK, who are resident there and who aim to get citizenship. So the prospective citizens. The statistics point to India, Nigeria, China, Pakistan, Philippines as being the largest countries. So Pakistan matters in this. How do they feel about these changes in your experience?
Okay, so there's been right now, ever since the announcement for the 10-year qualifying period, a lot of people did panic. And the reason that they panicked was because everybody has their life planned in a certain way. And saying to someone that they have to stay in the country for 10 years and pay taxes for another 5 years if they've already done four and a half is sort of absurd. And because of this, a lot of people did write to the MPs. They did write so that this is debated in Parliament extensively before it is applied, and that's exactly what's being done right now. There's a consultation going on how this might impact people, but the final sort of conclusion has not been published by the government for whatever consultations they have planned. One of the reasons for that is that there is sort of this whisper of having an earned settlement and citizenship scheme in which they're going to have a point-based system depending on how much you've contributed to the UK to let you decide how quickly you can settle. So if you say, what I make of this has not been published anywhere yet, but the consensus largely is among experts that the higher the tax you pay, the quicker you're allowed to settle, because obviously you are contributing to the UK economy via your taxes. If you have a job that's above, say, degree level, that might also count towards a faster settlement as opposed to having a 10-year settlement, is to encourage the good migrants to stay and sort of the lower skill bracket to decide to leave. The whole reason why the government is trying to do this right now, the reason that they've cited is they want to bring down net migration. And to me, that's absurd because last year, net migration had already taken a nosedive after some amendments that had been made to the immigration rules, like raising salary thresholds that were required in order to get the skilled worker visa. They raised those last year and they're raising them even further now, which is going to impact the community. A lot of people that I've spoken to, they want to leave the country. Some people are saying that they might not stay in the UK long term now that it's announced a 10-year qualifying period. But at the same time, I do know a large group of people that say that it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, as long as they are allowed to work here and do their jobs and pay their taxes, they pretty much have the same rights as everyone else, except for the ability to be able to switch employers. So that is the first group of people that I would like to talk about. What was your second question? I'm sorry.
The second group that I wanted to mention was the existing communities, the ethnics. So as you said, indigenous, therefore, quote, non-indigenous, but British citizens, perhaps multi-generational. Perhaps their parents came in the 70s, so they're second or third generation. It's interesting for me always to see second and third generation ethnics and their attitudes towards migrants from
Towards
their
immigration.
ancestral
I mean,
countries.
it's funny because I think that the UK has become a country in which there's a lot of focus on nation state as a concept. And the whole reason any of this is happening is because the reasons are more political rather than economic or any other reason. I think one of the biggest pressures the government has had in recent times is because of a party called Reform UK. And Reform UK, as you may know, is led by a gentleman called Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage has some very right wing policies towards immigration and immigrants. And out of the fear of Labour not winning the next election, Labour kind of wants to fall in line into what people are expecting in the country. So, as I said at the start of this conversation, there's a large sentiment in the UK that there's been enough of immigration and there's been enough people that have come into the country and it should stop because it's changing the fabric of society. So, I think Labour is trying to play on that sort of politics where it wants to gain the popular vote by sort of encouraging those voters to vote Labour because Labour is trying to be tough on the immigrants.
Okay.
Um, but overall, throughout the country, if you talk to most of the people, a lot of them will agree with you that legal migration is fine as long as everybody is coming in through the right channels, they're being screened properly, and they're here for a reason, which is doing a job or a business or whatever it may be. The UK just is tired of people coming in freeloading, which brings me to my next topic, which is there are a large number of boats that come into UK waters every year carrying people who have, illegally gotten into international waters and now are trying to cross the international waters to come into the country and cross the border. I think those people are the real problem here, and those people are the actual people that most people in the UK have a problem with. It's not legal migration per se that the people are concerned about. It's the illegal migration that's happening in this country. It's the people smuggling that's happening in this country. And the UK is trying to work with France and other countries to try to tighten the borders and not let this happen as frequently. But the problem we are seeing right now is that legal migrants are facing the penalties for the illegal migrants coming in, which is going to start pushing these people into places where they might apply for asylums, or these legal people might just say, I don't want to do this job anymore, I'm just going to apply for asylum because it's way better for me doing that because the country listens
Mm.
that way and it's in my favor. So it's all of these things that need to be considered. I think that the Human Rights Act needs to be disapplied from asylum cases in particular, or there needs to be a very tough screening of which cases are genuine and which cases aren't, because a lot of these applications that are being made turn out to be false or completely made up, and it's hurting both the confidence of the people that are living in the UK and earning an honest living, and it's also hurting the confidence of people who are sort of immigrants and doing things the right way. So I think there has to be some middle ground that the government has to reach at some point, and it has to make a decision whether it wants to favor very nationalist sort of objectives and agendas, or whether it wants to, control illegal migration, let the economy thrive with legal migration, and strike a balance with people who don't want immigration in the country.
Fine. But there's two nuances that I want to touch upon. One is revealed preferences. It happens more in other countries, America mein hota hai, Canada mein hota hai, that
Mhm.
they rely on the argument that I don't like illegal, but I'm okay with legal, particularly in the United States, because there's a large inflow of undocumented people. But when you ask them in private conversation, yeah, but I just really don't like these people. But that's the long and short of it. And
Yeah.
the other thing is the ethnic element, because of the birth rates, the UK will ultimately be a white minority country, maybe 50 years, 100 years, maybe 10 years, who knows? The projections make a big difference.
Yeah.
And it was very funny to me कि जब ये 2016 में ब्रेक्सिट हो रहा था, तो ये देसी लोग और ये काले लोग जो कि वहाँ मुकीम हैं, बाशिंदे हैं, वो कह रहे हैं, are bloody foreigners in it, and we'll go and like to throw out Europeans when they themselves are the ethnics, और उनकी एक नस्ल परस्ती या एक जजीरा नुमा ज़हनियत थी about foreigners who are Europeans. So how
Yes.
does this play out in terms of it? It's complex, I suppose.
I mean, it
What do
is
you
very
think?
complex. I think that there's a wide spectrum of people. I think that ones that have already made it across and gotten their citizenships and nationalities are like, fine, close the door behind me because I don't really care
Mm.
now that I have it. Eliminate the competition for me, because you have to sort of imagine that whoever comes into the country is more competition for you. They're going to be competing for jobs. They're going to be competing for everything.
Right.
So I don't think that the people that have already gotten it have a lot of soft corners for people that have just entered the country. But at the
Mm.
same time, I do realize that there are people in the UK at the same time who think that migration is actually a very good thing for the country. It creates diversity. It creates a vast sort of diversity in opinion, and it creates sort of opportunities. Because I'll tell you what, there's a lot of immigration that happens in the country that is corporate immigration. At the end of the day, these are companies that are based abroad. They come to the UK and they employ people from within the UK. So there's immigrants that are bringing money and business into the country, which shouldn't be ignored because it's going to create jobs for people. So you have
Mm.
to look at both perspectives. There is obviously the sentiment that says, oh yeah, I don't want these people in my country. These Europeans are just taking my jobs. But at the same time, um, I think that London, for me, or the UK as a general, is one of those places in the world where it's a second home for everyone. It's nobody's first home, and the majority of people that you meet here have at some point come here from somewhere else. So I do think that there is a soft spot in people who have just come here because they realize how hard it is without having a proper regularized status. And at the same time, there's people who don't want them here. So
Mm.
there's this large sort of politics and dynamic situation and policy changes that are being implemented so fast that it's hard for lawyers to keep up with them these days.
It's interesting. Let's want to bring an anecdote from the past, and then we can ask your opinion about the future. The people who built Stonehenge, which is in the United Kingdom, were not the people who are in the UK now. There was a new wave of population that came about 4,000 years ago and took over the land, which the previous people who built the actual Stonehenge, those people are not around. So these movements happen, and history sort of paints a broad brush. And that leads me to the future. So, what is the UK going to look like if Nigel Farage's median voter theory tug happens and goes all the way to the far right, pulling everybody towards hostility towards immigrants? तो फिर 10 साल बाद यूके कैसा होगा या 20 साल बाद यूके कैसा लगेगा?
I mean, this is the problem right now. With Labour right now in government, the policies that they've come out with just now are extremely right wing already. When they're supposed to be a left center party, everybody votes Labour because they think that they're voting for a center left party.
Hmm.
But this time, Labour's come out with some very restrictive sort of legislation. This was just immigration, right? There's other stuff that they're doing as well. They want to sort of cut off disability allowances for people. They've cut off winter fuel payments for old people. So
Hmm.
they have done some really sort of messy stuff in which a lot of people are angry with them, which is why the next party that comes into power might not be Labour, it might actually be Reform UK. And if that happens, we think that Nigel Farage might actually end naturalization and settlement as a concept in the UK.
Hmm.
So I think it will become so restrictive or just probably wouldn't even exist. I think they'll just finish off immigration. And if you want to come here to work, you can come here and work, but you're never going to be able to settle over here. You're never going to be owned. You're never going to be a citizen of the country, no matter how long you worked. And I think there's a lot of people that are rooting in his favor. There's the EDL with all of those guys that want to sort of kick Muslims out of the country with this Islamophobia rhetoric. There's all of this kind of stuff happening as well, and I think there's some aspect of it that has to do with Gaza and Palestine as well. Because when there's marches and protests in London, you would see that the roads actually are closed because there's so many people that come out. And I think it's become a little surprising to the lawmakers that, oh, where these are all these people come from, doing the
Hmm.
protest in our country. So I think that kind of paints this picture as well, in which they think that they're losing control of their country. So I think that there's going to be this English nationalist sort of sentiment that does arise and takes over, because we're seeing more and more of this racism, which has started in Brexit and is continuing all the way till now, till 2025. And in the foreseeable future, it might become an even more restrictive place. But at the end of the day, what does this mean for the UK economy? Because at the end of the day,
Yes.
I want to do an impact assessment. The impact for them is going to be when you fight with all of your friends, then you have no one to play with.
Mm,
That's my assessment of the whole situation. If you fight with Europe, you fight with all of your neighbors on tariffs and trade deals and such. And now you can see them slightly trying to wiggle back into the EU. I don't know whether you've read or not. Recently, they've signed a deal with the EU in which they've said, okay,
yes.
we let EU citizens back into the country on a temporary worker visa for 2 years. So it's a youth mobility scheme that they're introducing that exists for countries like India already, in
Mm,
which there is a ballot. You sign up for the ballot. If you win, you get a visa to come and work in the UK for 2 years. And during that time, you can switch that visa over to a full-time skilled worker visa and settle in 5 years. So it becomes sort of like this stepping stone
mm,
for you. So they've come up with this for the EU, and they've also negotiated when British sort of people are going on holiday into Europe in the summer, instead of queuing up into a non-EU country line, they would have a fast checkout using machine readable passports for all of these people that are coming from the UK.
mm,
Last summer, we saw long lines of people that went from the UK to maybe Spain or Greece or Italy, that wanted to go on holiday and were standing in massive queues just because they've left the EU.
mm.
But I think that overall, the UK needs to think very hard about where they want to take this country over the next 20 years. I do appreciate that they want to invest into local skill building and capacity building for their people. But at the same time, we also have to realize that there's a lot of people here, maybe about 10 million people in the country, that aren't looking for a job, that don't
Mm,
want to work, or have some sort of disability, or can't contribute to the economy as an active sort of contributor. So
mm,
we need to make sure that whatever steps are being taken today don't play out badly in the long run, because the UK is already starting to look like a third world country on the streets.
mhm. All right. Well, it may get worse in that regard, but Danish Farooq Saab, I want to thank you for your time. It's very informative, also very worrying. UK isn't what it used to be, but that's just the way it'll be unless they change their mind. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saab. Have a nice one. Take care.